Now the Princess Elizabeth we knew and loved returns amongst us as our Queen. Before her plane, her government and leaders of the other parties receive her greeting. No queen had ever such councillors so predetermined to give of their best. No queen had ever such a people so devoted.
It was the end of an era. It was the end of the Elizabethan age as we know it.
There are so many people in this country today that don't even remember anybody else but the Queen.
A part of our lives that was taken for granted as being permanent is no longer there. And in that sense, there is an enormous shift in the world around us.
It's news nobody wished to hear. The Queen has been such a permanence in our lives for so long. You simply expected her to go on forever.
A few moments ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. The palace has just issued this statement. It says the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon.
Her reign lasted for 70 years, from post-war austerity and the end of empire through the expansion of the Commonwealth. She helped preserve the institution of the monarchy during times of massive social change. At her coronation, the Queen repeated her pledge to serve her people and fulfilled it throughout her reign with a combination of skill and a sense of duty.
And so the reign of Elizabeth II comes to a close after 70 years at the age of 96. Her son Charles is now king.
Well, this is a desperately sad day for all of us here in this country, but also across the Commonwealth and the world, because the Queen was respected around the world. She had given a lifetime of service, and her devotion to duty was an example and inspiration for us all.
London's black cab drivers lined the Mall in tribute and respect. There will be many days ahead in which those here in Edinburgh whose lives she touched, those who had the privilege of meeting her, those who felt they knew her as well as their own grandmother, even though they'd never met, will have their turn to honour her in books of condolence or as she lies in state. But for today, it's the simple act of placing flowers and watching the rainbows that arched briefly over both the palace and Windsor Castle at the moment her death was announced, and of quietly giving thanks for a life of supreme duty.
The Queen lived out the history that had accumulated in the office of monarch over 1,000 years. She lived in the present, So she lived in the present with her first Prime Minister, who had been in a cavalry charge. And she lived in the present with human beings landing on the moon. She lived in the present with the COVID.
Well, any Prime Minister who didn't listen to the Queen's views was a very foolish man or woman indeed, because she had an historic memory, longer than any civil service advisor. She had a great understanding of how people lived and was very interested in what government policy meant for the lives of people in different parts of the country.
It is a real pleasure to have an opportunity so early in my reign of visiting such a beautiful part of the Principality, and to see that the natural beauty of these Welsh hills has not been impaired by this vast work of modern engineering.
I think the public will be immensely sad. To many people, to most people, she has been a permanence in their lives ever since they were born. There are a few people who remember the old king, but they're a tiny minority of the population now. And the great gifts the Queen has had is not only has she been the monarch, the symbol of royalty, but because of the manner in which she has lived, because of her empathy, she is almost as though she's a supernumerary member of every family in the country. So I think her loss will be personally felt by people. Not just felt, oh, it is sad that we have lost a great figure, but I think there will be personal degrees of sadness, and a great many tears will be shed over the next few days.
8 years ago, I heard the moving words which my father spoke when he unveiled the statue of King George V that stands by the Houses of Parliament. I did not think then that in so short a time I should be called to take his place. But it is with pride that I unveil this noble statue today.
I think what has defined the Elizabethan era is it took us from the ravages of war to this extraordinary world in which we live in now. And so it actually defines the era of the greatest change the world has ever known. And yet, she managed to stay the same. I think that is the secret. So when the world was moving so fast and changing, and we've gone from, just having television to the most sophisticated kind of technology that you could ever imagine. And that's just all in one person's lifetime, which is extraordinary. And I think the Elizabethan age defies that huge, huge change. And yet, there's still some things that remain the same. And one of them was this sort of stoicism of the Queen and her sense of duty. And I think that sense of duty has probably died with the age, because people don't think like that anymore. They now struggle to do things for themselves and look out for themselves and their families, and that's about it. But the Queen's duty embraced everybody.
The period of national mourning and reflection that we go into is important for two reasons. First, as a mark of respect for a truly exceptional life, and of course for the royal family, but also as a moment of true reflection on what Her Majesty the Queen taught us, what she gave us. Because as we go forward from here, it will be important to understand that. In a world that is ever-changing and very volatile, she provided constancy and consistency for the British people. And those are qualities that we all need to learn to value more. She defined the national character in most of the last century and in this, what it is to be British. That mix of stoicism and a sense of humour, a great basis on which anybody can face the ups and downs of life, but also stern and serious, yet warm and generous at the same time. That's Queen Elizabeth II, as I remember her.
William and Kate, Harry and Meghan, in the same place at the same time. Given how bad their rift had become, many wondered if they'd ever be able to meet together in private, let alone like this. This week, however, they are sharing the common pain of losing the grandmother they loved. It was, according to a royal source tonight, Prince William who asked his brother if he and Meghan would join them here. And both sides clearly agreed that their family, perhaps also the nation right now, needed to see this.
This is a moment of acute loss and profound sadness. It is also a moment of enormous significance. The passing of Queen Elizabeth marks the end of an era. Our nation is in mourning. My heart and my thoughts, and I know those of people across Scotland, are with the royal family at this deeply sad moment. I hope it will be a source of comfort to her family that she spent her final days in a place that she loved so much.
Well, the first thing that went through my mind was remembering the times I'd spent with her and her family at Balmoral, and thinking that, of course, the first thing is that children have lost a mother and grandchildren have lost a grandmother. The family have lost someone who's given them such love and such leadership and such brilliance over so many years. And then you think what it means for all of us. It was such a privilege to be her 12th Prime Minister. And obviously she's been our monarch all my life. We've never known anything else. So my second reflection was that, you know, we've lost the world's greatest public servant. We've lost the world's greatest diplomat.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you and Mrs. Bush to London. Visits by American presidents have been memorable landmarks in my reign. Unlike in the United States, the British head of state is not limited to 2 terms of 4 years. And I have welcomed no fewer than 7 of your predecessors. 60 years ago, Winston Churchill coined the term special relationship to describe the close collaboration between the United Kingdom and United States forces that was instrumental in freeing Europe from tyranny. So, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to raise your glasses to President and Mrs. Bush, to the continued friendship between our 2 nations, and to the health, prosperity, and happiness of the people of the United States.
We're still going to be finding out just what we had and just what we lost. I think for many weeks, months, and years to come, it's been an extraordinary privilege to be British in this great Elizabethan age.
Princess Anne, the Princess Royal and her husband, Admiral Timothy Lawrence, they accompanied the Queen's coffin all the way from Balmoral back to Buckingham Palace, as had been the Queen's request that her daughter should accompany her coffin, which again is very moving. You know, she knew that her daughter was very stoic and was the right person to do this. And Timothy Lawrence was a one-time equerry to the Queen, so she knew him very well.
At 5:30 this evening, the Queen's journey in Scotland drew to a close. The coffin accompanied by Princess Anne, as the Queen, who held this country in such deep affection, departed Scottish soil.
You're clearly very, very sad. Tell me how you're feeling right now at this news.
Just touched with the whole situation, you know. You don't think you will be, but she's been part of my life forever. And, you know, she's not here. She's gone. And, you know, you hope, but you appreciate that, you know, her age, it was expected at some point, but even when it happens, it's still a shock. And that's what I'm feeling now. Just got that feeling the way I feel.
Despite steady rain, thousands lined the A40 into central London from the west. On the other side of the road, they stopped, nose to tail, in the fast lane, as the cortege came past. As they passed Marble Arch, the pavements on the western end of Oxford Street and down Park Lane were packed and silent. Rounding the Victoria Memorial in front of Buckingham Palace, the crowd was dotted with hundreds of tiny lights as people lit her way home with the torches on their phones. Her police motorcycle escort, their job done, stopped, heads bowed on either side. Inside the palace, her family were waiting to receive her. Children and grandchildren gathered for a last private evening before her coffin is taken in procession back into public view for the lying in state in Westminster Hall tomorrow afternoon.
Well, just heard it 5 minutes ago, obviously, 5-10 minutes ago. We knew it was coming, obviously.
But it's like when you lose parents, you know it's coming, but it still upsets you.
Amazing lady. What she's done for this country.
The duty she started when she got the aeroplane, when she was, 23, 24? And her duty was to look after all the people for us, you know. And it just took me back when her husband died, a couple of years ago last year, and she was out by herself.
Setting an example, but you need your family round you, don't you, to hug you. And
yes.
She is the United Kingdom. She represents a part of me and a part of every British person, and she is the country. And so I was just absolutely devastated, and I knew I had to come somewhere where there'd be other British people where I could speak about it, and maybe find someone someone else who could also understand whilst I'm in Paris.
Very important to me, very important to everybody. I know that it's British, it's English, and I think we all feel the same way right now. We all feel a bit lost, I think, tonight, and we all, a bit lost, and feel like we've lost our way a bit tonight.
Yeah, it's not that far, like half an hour.
Yeah, that's true. Let's just see cars.
Bring it.
So you brought it just for the occasion?
Yeah. I was leaving the house, I didn't know what to bring.
You just thought, I'll grab anything?
I'll grab anything, I'll grab a candle and a passport. She's just always been someone who's been there. She's on our $5 note, and I don't know what this next chapter will look like without her. And, it might be a wonderful next step for Australia, but it's still really sad to leave this era behind.
When it was finally announced that the Queen had died, there was an extraordinary outpouring of grief amongst the nation because, the majority of the Queen's subjects had never known another monarch. And it was kind of the end of an era. It wasn't just her death, it was the end of an era. It was end of the Elizabethan age as we know it.
A part of our lives that was taken for granted as being permanent is no longer there. And in that sense, there is an enormous shift in the world around us, in how we see it and how we understand ourselves. And I think many people will be finding that sense of not just grief, but also uncertainty. And to some extent, a wondering about what is permanent.
Obviously, for the people of this city and this city region, those qualities were brought to this city by Her Majesty the Queen at important moments. In 1996, she was on the ground in this city within days when terrorism had struck at its heart. In 2017, again, more devastatingly this time, she visited the Royal Manchester Children's Hospital, a private visit, And speaking to the young victims, their families, the staff afterwards, it was hard to put into words, actually, the lift that her visit gave them.
My daughter's friend, we were waiting, and my daughter's friend's mum, and she died. She was one of the ones that she died in the past.
Yeah.
So, and I told her she's got a couple of operations ahead, but it just means such a lot that you've come today.
And what happened to you?
I had one of the wounds as well, shrapnel wounds, so I think it was nuts and bolts.
And then more positively, in 2002, when the city was holding the Commonwealth Games, it coincided with the Queen's Golden Jubilee, and that was a moment that will live long in the memory of this city and its people.
My goodness, I've been busy. Of course, our association is more than a partnership of governments. The real soul of the Commonwealth, the motor, the drive, call it what you will, is provided by people within and without those governments.
My family is in mourning. The whole of the country is in mourning. Her Majesty the Queen will be mourned not only by 60 million of the British people, but by the 2.5 billion people in the 54 countries of the Commonwealth. Everywhere I went, Her Majesty was respected, she was admired, she was revered, and we will miss her greatly. There is no monarch who has served so long with such popularity and held in such high esteem and dedicated herself so much to the future of our country.
The queue for lying in state at Westminster Hall became a story in itself because the people were queuing for 10 hours, 13 hours, even longer. And it was cold, and the queue was almost the story more than the actual lying in state.
Not long now, sun's out. Keep smiling.
It's just a table of snacks and sugar to keep you going.
Thousands of dawns have broken over Westminster, but very few have broken on a day quite like this. Here to witness it, hundreds of people willing to sit through the rainy night to pay their last respects to the Queen.
But I haven't had any sleep. The adrenaline kicks in, I think.
Patricia spent the whole night in the queue. She was saved from sleeping on the wet pavement by a local resident.
He was really kind, like our guardian angel, because it fell down with rain.
She's described you as a guardian angel.
Not at all. The guardian angel of the country is over there.
By mid-morning, those who braved the night were being joined by others hoping not to queue for so long, from the elderly to the very young, each with their own reasons to come.
This is the only monarch I've known for the whole 10 years of my life. Because this is history, so I just want to kind of just try and be a part of it.
You know, today, I think back to my grandparents, because if my grandparents were alive, they would have been here. So it's nice to be here to celebrate with everybody, the life of Her Majesty and the legacy that she's left.
Her Majesty served us for 70 years. So it's the least I could do. So I'm not bothered at all about how long it took. Not bothered at all to say goodbye to Her Majesty.
Not one person's moaned. It really has been how the Queen would want it.
Because there's so many people coming out for her.
I think she just, yeah, she'd be so happy that we're all talking and we're just one nation. It really is.
Give me a little wave, give me a little wave. When you get in there, it is very emotional. Thank you. Warm hands. I was dressed last night.
Everyone was so friendly and so of one mind. There was a wonderful feeling of unity. And people that did queue for sort of 13 hours and things said actually the queuing was part of the whole experience.
So, you are the last person in the queue.
Oh, bless you.
So, well done. Do you want to both come this way, please? Yeah, you still get one, don't worry.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
I think the day of the funeral on the 19th of September was very, very difficult for the family. They had to remain completely impassive because that was their duty to either, their mother or their grandmother or their great-grandmother. That's what she would have expected.
I think her death is quite a psychological blow to the nation, and it's going to be very difficult for some people to get over it, because for most people she's just been there throughout their entire lives. So it's going to take some getting used to.
There were two services, one in Westminster Abbey, which was the main state funeral service with heads of state, foreign royalty, dignitaries, people from charities. And then there was a committal at St. George's Chapel, Windsor, which was quite different. About 800 people, but it was all the people that had worked for the Queen. Her racehorse trainers, her gardeners, her cooks, her grooms, you know, people that had worked in the household over the years, people that had the Royal Victorian Order, her ladies in waiting, their husbands. It was completely wonderful. Everyone was together, and everyone had one aim, and that was to say goodbye to the Queen, who in many cases was a close friend. And it sort of really drove it home that there was this wonderful, humble woman who was no longer there.
I think the Queen was just a beacon of stability through incredibly changing times. Every decade that she was on the throne, there were massive changes, social changes, and there were wars. There were recessions. There were financial crises. There was a COVID crisis. All these things, and she was the one constant. Several prime ministers, 14, 15 prime ministers, 14 or 15 US presidents, you know, come and gone in that time that she was there. She met virtually all of them and knew virtually all of them. And nobody else in history will have that experience, and the respect that she was held in, particularly in Commonwealth countries and around the world, is going to be hard to beat.
Once more, the gracious courtesies of diplomacy at the top. Anthems were played. President Sinai welcomed the royal family. He must have heaved a sigh of relief that the Queen has nothing to do with active politics.
It's going to be very difficult a very difficult act for Prince Charles to follow. Obviously, he's a much older man than the Queen was when she came to the throne. So whatever happens, he's not going to have a long reign, and that's going to be difficult for him. But he's known this for a long time, and I think people are now going to start to be looking at William and Kate for the future. And I think most people think that William and Kate will make a great team and be a great king and queen.
The Prince Charles Philip Arthur George is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III.
Well, I always thought that Charles would make a wonderful king because he cares so much. He cares about his country, he cares about its heritage, he cares about the planet, and he cares about the people. And I think that that's really the attributes you need for a king in 2022. I think he is perfect.
As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself, throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation. And wherever you may live in the United Kingdom, or in the realms and territories across the world, and whatever may be your background or beliefs, I shall endeavor to serve you with loyalty, respect, and love, as I have throughout my life. On behalf of all my family, I can only offer the most sincere and heartfelt thanks for your condolences and support. They mean more to me than I can ever possibly express. And to my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want simply to say this: thank you. Thank you for your love and devotion to our family and to the family of nations you have served so diligently all these years. May flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.